Well, sweeping new guidelines for ride-hailing companies in China are set to tighten business conditions for the likes of Didi Global. The company is already under pressure from Chinese authorities to quit its public listing in the U.S. Authorities say they want to protect the rights of the millions of contract workers that drive growth in the industry and the rights of consumers. But at what cost to the companies? Well, let's get more from Lo Min in Shanghai. Min, some analysts describe this as a further blow to the ride-hailing group Didi and its smaller peers. But how big a shakeout in the industry could this cause?
Well, there were two key guidelines to pay attention to today. The government wants Didi and its rivals to provide more social insurance for drivers and to increase their commission. And the other thing is to protect consumer data. Now, let me explain why these two guidelines were issued today. Didi actually used to control about 80% of the market share. And in 2019, Didi had stopped paying its drivers social insurance. It claims that these drivers are not its full-time employees. They are just contract or temporary workers. And a lot of drivers are actually uncertain about how much commissions they're getting. And these commissions keep changing according to different promotions that are pushed out by different ride-hailing platforms. And there are cases where drivers would switch platforms only to have their rewards and their commissions reduced after working for a few months. So this guideline is really to clean up the sector and to protect these drivers that don't have easy access to social insurance, in line with the government's push for common prosperity to reduce inequality in the country. Now, the other thing is about consumer protection. And you can imagine how much data companies like Didi have if they can track our movement. They know which days we're going to which places, not just for consumers like you and me, but also for powerful people in the government. And that's why this concerns national security. And the other reason is also price differentiation. One Fudan professor has found that Didi actually pushes out recommendations for luxury car bookings 3 times more often to iPhone users compared to Android users. So again, this is a sort of regulatory catch-up to implement the kind of data protection law that are already in place in places like Europe. And the subtext in all of this is that Didi is a huge monopoly and the government wants to reduce its market share and to increase competition here. And what consumers can expect is that perhaps ride-hailing could become more expensive in the future if companies are expected to pay their drivers more. Liz?
Well, Didi Global is of international interest right now because it is reportedly under pressure to remove its share listing in the U.S. Could these curbs accelerate that?
Well, Didi rushed ahead with an IPO in June against the government's blessing. And that really, in hindsight, is seen as a huge mistake for any company here in China. We need to see the recent slew of anti-monopolistic crackdown, not just as something that's done to benefit consumers, but also for the government to exert the ultimate control over the private sector, especially over companies that are growing too big and too powerful. And so Beijing has reportedly asked Didi to come up with a proposal to delist from the U.S. market. The timeline that they're given has not been revealed to the public, and there are still speculation about whether there would be a state-directed takeover as part of the punishment for them going against the government's wishes. But what is clear at this point is that this is not the end of the regulatory crackdown. Experts told me that we can expect more reforms in this sector for the next 2 to 3 years.
Well, thanks for that, Lo Min in Shanghai.